What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and today we're talking about PlayStation because it's pretty clear that Sony themselves is beginning to freak out because they don't exactly understand how to handle the hype of the PlayStation 5. But let me explain. So, in the past, Sony has done a very good job of actually growing games. I mean, if you ever played even the last generation, the PS4, you'll probably recognize the PlayStation hits. Now, I'm making a point here. These are games that sold millions and millions of copies. Stuff like Infamous, Uncharted, Gran Turismo. These are series that were made, were crafted, were exploded by Sony, and now they're kind of scratching their own heads. PlayStation has not been putting out many games, but today, officially, the president of PlayStation straight up said, we just don't have enough original ideas to even continue making big budget stuff. And yeah, a lot of PlayStation fans are not pleased about this, but I want to break it down and I kind of want to just talk about the state of PlayStation because this is bizarre to say the least. Hi, hope you're having a great day, and if you could please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. So, this is the actual quote from the head of Sony saying that we don't own enough original IP. Whether it's games, films, or anime, we don't have that much IP that we've fostered from the beginning. Now, a lot of the replies are people just very mad, being like, what the heck are they talking about? Literally, Gravity Rush, Patapon, Resistance 3. We're going to list off like 10 trillion of them, but even stuff like Astrobot that they have personally grown. This is one of their more recent series. The next big Astrobot game is coming out in 2 days. So a lot of people are like, okay, how is it that PlayStation Studios can be so big? Because objectively, Sony is massive. The success of the PS5, and maybe soon to be the PS5 Pro, is truly crazy. I mean, the amount of consoles sold, it seems like they're cooking when the kitchen is empty. But I like this reply. Much like Ubisoft, Sony is sitting on an absolute gold mine of IP and franchises that they shelved for no reason. Now, I do feel like part of the weirdness of the whole Sony situation, the fact that they're canceling games, the fact that they're scrapping ideas, the fact that they're being so quiet, they're not even bragging about future projects or even giving us loose release dates. At this point, Sony's silence, I feel like, is the baddest part of the brand, but I feel like this kind of stuff is wild to truly just see it listed out. SOCOM, Resistance, Killzone, Warhawk, Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, Twisted Metal, Infamous, Motorstorm, Siphon Filter, all forgotten. I mean, even stuff like Bloodborne. I mean, it's crazy that you could literally sit here and just list off 10 out of 10 games that made the PlayStation successful and now just don't exist. They're not even really referenced. Now, additionally, I have seen some people kind of saying these are not the kind of games that would work today. I was watching Kind of Funny Games Daily. It's like a daily gaming news show they do over on the Kind of Funny channel. And Greg Miller originally was one of the biggest PlayStation podcasters on the planet. And he was talking about the closure of Concord because that's still such a wild situation. And he said specifically something that kind of jumped out in my mind, where he said, you can't just make Killzone today. Sony needs to make new stuff instead of just going back to the well over and over again. And some of the comments are kind of roasting him, but I think, he's able to have his own opinion. I think a lot of people are just mad because these were the brands that built Sony. Like, undoubtedly. If you go to the comment section of any video I've made talking about PlayStation history, there are hundreds and hundreds of people talking about, I bought my first PlayStation to play a bunch of games that were made by Sony. I first played Gran Turismo or played the Uncharted games. That's the reason most people bought a PlayStation 3. And those games are just gone. and they're not even replaced with other stuff. I feel like that's the weirdest part of it. It's not that we're getting, different games. It's that we're getting less games. And a big inspiration for this is the fact that I can't help but think about Sean Layden. This guy used to be the head of PlayStation, and he had this great quote where he said, "Every PlayStation game must be best, first, or must. It must be best in class. It must do something that's never been done before, or it must be something that's absolutely a must-have, like VR games to support PSVR." Now, you can hate Sean Layden for some of his choices or some of the things that he was overly obsessed with, like he really thought the PlayStation Vita was going to take off, but undoubtedly, this is the magic that made PlayStation. Now, Sean Layden has been pointing out a lot of problems with current day Sony, and something else he's said that I feel like has been very resonant is he's discussed the fact that games take so long to make and are honestly so expensive. Like back when he was in charge, you could make an incredibly good, an incredibly high budget game in 2 years. But I mean, that was just what you were able to do in the PlayStation 3 and early PlayStation 4 generation. But it's weird now that so many projects take longer and longer to make. And if they're not the biggest thing on the planet, they get closed down, they get shuttered, they completely flop. Now, part of the inspiration for this is that I keep seeing people talk about the fact that cool PlayStation games are dying. Good ideas are probably internally still being tested and messed with. They're just not seeing the light of day because they get canned before they get released. Japan studio being shuttered, 8 years of development, millions of dollars poured into this, complete and abject failure, shut down after 2 weeks. I see a lot of people still discussing the Concord mess. I've seen a lot of people, specifically my subscribers and stuff. I've gotten like literally 5,000 comments literally in the last 24 hours begging me to talk more about my thoughts on the whole Concord mess. And I see tweets like this that I respectfully disagree with, which is that Firewalk devs are having to deal with this blowback and they don't deserve it. There's a good game in there. It sucks that it has to end this way. I still hope it can get a comeback, but who knows? Now, I am not attacking the developers. I'm not saying they suck or they're bad people or they should be run out of the industry and stuff like that. It's the fact that I don't know if there even is a good game in there. Like maybe with enough polishing, anything can eventually be great. But a lot of replies are like, yeah, man, they do deserve it. They're the ones that pitched the game. They're the ones that tried to market it. They tried to actually get this off the ground and it just wasn't successful. Like if the developers of the game launch it and it flops, I mean, somebody's to blame at some level of it, but I do think this is a bit of a weird mess where the industry is trying to adapt to trends that I don't think exist. I think a lot of these head-up CEOs, a lot of these executives, a lot of these top-tier business taste makers are the guys that truly believe that the only games that are existing are Genshin Impact and freaking Battle Pass freaking games. They truly believe that the only way to get something out there is to have some perpetual machinations, stuff that's going to constantly churn out eternal revenue, and those games just don't exist. Like, there are some games as a service stuff like MMORPGs that, of course, are successful, but the amount that actually rise to the top is exceedingly rare. You might as well buy a lottery ticket. Your chances of winning that are about as good as making a current day live service game that's going to take off. But this is something from Co-Carnage. Obviously, this guy is such a huge streamer, and he comes up with a lot of interesting takes where he said they are dismantling and refunding Concord completely. The best thing that can happen in this case is we see the other Monolith creators finally take notice of how old their machines are, and they simply no longer work. Concord is the canary in the coal mine. The world is changing. I like this take a lot because I do think that there is a lesson that needs to be learned from this. And not just the fact that Sony wasted hundreds of millions of dollars. This isn't just the fact that, honestly, it's the biggest financial flop in all of gaming history. It's the fact that I feel like we're kind of forgetting that games should just be games. It's just about fun. It's just about entertainment. A lot of these companies, I do think that they try to figure out the monetization models, how it's going to pay itself off before they even figure out a story or a gameplay loop or even a game engine. I do see stuff like that. Yeah, the game does suck. Aim your hate at the right people. I keep seeing stuff like that, which is, yeah, this is tone-deaf executives. I feel like the PlayStation community is coming to a point where they are annoyed by the silence of Sony. Like this, what lessons does PlayStation need to learn from Concord? And all of the replies are like, give us what we want. Stop copying trends. Be original. Concord may have stumbled, but PlayStation has shown they grasp the value of fresh perspective. We don't need 47 live service games. Stop all these live service games. I think that's the biggest part of all this, is that it does seem like Sony does not fully grasp how to make games in the way they did in the past. I have a quote that I said, 5-6 years ago at this point, where I said, Sony's talent is not making games, it's putting good game makers in the same room. I mean, in the past, whenever they churn out something like Horizon Zero Dawn, which personally, I completely love Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm very much obsessed with Forbidden West. I think those games are incredibly good. But I feel like part of the magic of that is that Sony let Herman Hulst and the team over at Guerrilla just go ballistic. They gave them infinite budget and infinite time to channel their passion for making a weird game with a female protagonist hunting mechanized robot dinosaurs, and it turns out so good. I mean, that game is not only fantastic, I feel like it is emblematic. It's emblematic of the good magic of PlayStation, of being able to figure out how to make something work and sell it. Whereas now, current day PlayStation is so afraid of not hitting market expectations or quota goals and stuff, they're afraid to try stuff that's different. I truly believe the biggest effect from the failure of Concord is going to be a lot more remasters. Jim Ryan is gone, the old head of PlayStation. Very famously, he talked about an over-reliance on remakes and remasters. That's why you keep getting stuff like even this Uncharted collection, or there's rumors about maybe eventually someday bringing back something else from Software. You know, a Bloodborne remastered would be nice, but even the Demon Souls remake and stuff like that, I think we're going to see even more unoriginality because of the Concord flop. And to be honest, I'm not happy about that. I think that does actually suck as a person that does play a ton of PlayStation. Man, beating around the bush, Factions 2 got canceled, cemented the fact that games as a service, the initiative, had no real shot, and Jim Ryan's punk ass was definitely fired. I think the PlayStation industry, just AAA gaming in general, we see a lot of apologies, we see a lot of mistakes, we see a lot of errors in the system. And I feel like the problem is that Sony does not understand Sony. PlayStation does not remember the good old days of PlayStation, but it's hard to say what will get us back to those roots. I think the PlayStation 5 is still a good spot to game. I mean, third-party stuff is still good. They're still doing exclusive deals. And so, I mean, I'm not saying the PS5 is suddenly a paperweight, but it definitely sucks to see how much they have fallen. But these have just been some off-the-cuff thoughts. What do you guys think about PlayStation as it currently exists? And what do you think about this quote of them not owning enough IP? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you could, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And please keep dreaming. By the way, I just put up a 12-minute video talking about Space Marine 2. I beat the heck out of that game. It's a 10 out of 10. It might actually be my game of the year, which is insane to think about. So if you haven't watched that, I'll link it out at the end of the video. But Space Marine 2 is shockingly fantastic. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.